Hi, you're with Julian on the Brown Note at home for the first time ever, probably in pitch black because it's decided to be really dark, which isn't helpful for filming. And a review of the latest album by rugby band Spiritualized. Now, they formed on the ashes of Spacemen 3 back in the 80s. Spacemen 3, Justin Pierce and Martin Kemper. I should know this, I've known this band for so long. Peter Kember, I think his brother's Martin Kember's a musician as well. And they became synonymous with sort of very post-suicide, post-Velvet Underground drone music. And became one of the biggest cult underground bands of the 80s. And acrimoniously split in Drug-Fueled Haze, I believe. Where one half went off to be Sonic Boom and the other half went off to be one of the most respected space rock bands in history, Spiritualized. I did a piece a while back on my favourite albums of all time, my top 30. Not the best albums of all time, but the ones that I keep going back to and listening to. And second in that list was Ladies and Gentlemen, We Are Floating in Space by Spiritualized from 1997. Better than OK Computer. And it remains so. Have come back with... They actually aren't prolific, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Their 10th album, Everything Was Beautiful, has just come out. Their last two, I was very up and down about. Sweetheart, Sweet Light got a lot of attention and critical acclaim, and I'm a big fan of them, and I hated it. I thought Hey Jane, the 8-minute opening track, was one of the best things they've ever done. But the rest of it is really often... I think it is worse. He gets into this sort of nursery rhyme, simplistic melodies and lyrics. And I found a lot of the sort of family love-centric lyrics to be really cloying. Didn't like the instrumentation. But last one, And Nothing Hurt, I thought was brilliant. I thought it was one of their best albums this century. This time around, he's definitely made a few aesthetic choices. I've seen critics saying about how this is basically summing up the entirety of Spiritualized career and just going back and revisiting highlights. Don't really have a problem with that. But one thing that he's really done here is he's really gone for a wall of sound, a Phil Spector wall of sound. For better or worse. So in any given song, almost the entire album is 100 instruments playing at once. It's the densest thing I've ever heard from them. Which has pluses and minuses. You can hear it on the opener, very good track. It's a 6-minute opener with a big wall of sound, Always Together With You. And it's a really good track. It's got some really thundering melodies and shifts from one melodic group to another. Very strong opening track. Also very indicative of the fact that for most of this album, there's so much going on. There's so much instrumentation in the background that it kind of makes it a bit of a slurry as well, because it's so big. I must admit, I really, if there's a flaw to this pretty excellent album, I really liked on Ladies and Gentlemen how diverse the sonic palette was. Some songs were built off of fragments and motifs and build. Other songs were walls of sound. And there was a great range there, but this time around it really is that big wall of sound. It's like he just sat down with 20 people to make every track. But it is a great opener. And it gets even better, I think, with Best Thing Never Had, where it drops in a much sort of rockier, louder guitar, which the band can do, but sometimes sort of eschew and stick to more sort of transcendental, chiming sort of lines. And this has got a real good garage rock sort of 13th floor elevators, electricity off of Ladies and Gentlemen sort of vibe, and builds up a head of steam. If I said that the wall of sound is a problem with this album, a little bit, sometimes it's its strength, sometimes it's its weakness, I still would have liked a wider variety. The only thing stopping this being the best Spiritualized album this century for me is tracks 3 and 4, Let It Bleed for Iggy and Crazy. I think every other of the very short runtime of short track list of 7 tracks, everything else is excellent. And then there's 2 short tracks that don't really fit in the vibe of the album, almost like they're palate cleansers, but at a weird point, because maybe they could have dropped them sort of, before the epic tracks at the end a bit more. I thought that Let It Bleed for Iggy was getting into that nursery rhyme territory, a little bit country at times. And I think the worst track on the album's Crazy, which is just too simple. It reminded me of that album that I just didn't really like. Very sort of gentle nursery rhyme melodies and lyrics. And those 2 tracks aren't horrible, but drag the thing down. The mainline song, again, that hits a run of 3 very long songs until the end of the album. They're all fantastic. And it's very playing on their past. Sweetheart, Sweet Light is one of the lyrics, and that was the album that I didn't like. And it touches on the Spacemen 3 classic from the 80s, Bright Lights, Big City, as well. And a bit like that Hey Jane track, I really, really liked it. There's a lot of urgency to it, a lot of build. Same with that A song, Laid in Your Arms. Reminded me a bit of the last Godspeed You Black Emperor album, God's P at State's End. And it's good that on occasion they drop in that free jazz that Spiritualized often do, sometimes for entire tracks, where it's a cacophony, and they're very, very good at making a cacophony. You hear trumpets and saxophones and everything going off, atonal noises, and it's great to have that happen a few times. And I actually thought the last track, I'm Coming Home Again, which is the longest, was the best on the whole album. He drops his voice way back down into that sort of heroin addict croak that he does quite often, but I haven't really noticed him sing like that for a while, quite pained. And it's got this weird dun 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 loping almost bass riff that goes through the whole song that always sounds like it's just about to kick off. The drums are going to kick in and it's going to go off, and it just maintains this circular tension all the way through the track. I really, really like that. Very sort of halting sound. So I think it's a really, really good album. I definitely thought that it was slightly better than the last one, much better than the one before that, Sweetheart, Sweet Light one. And overall, he's got this, he's revisiting the past, but he's sort of creating his own version of the Phil Spector wall of sound. Like I said, 2 middling tracks in the middle of its 7-song run, which were by far the shortest tracks, and the rest of the tracks were great. So Spiritualized, everything was beautiful. I'm going to give an 8 out of 10.